Welcome back to Radio Taiwan International. You're listening to Geek Out. What's your cup of tea? Tickles your fancy or floats your boat? Join us as we share passions from people in Taiwan and around the world. I'm your host, Michelle Chang, and today in the studio we have my very good friend, Eric Gao.
Hi, everybody.
Want to introduce yourself?
Hi, as Michelle just said, my name is Eric Gao. I used to be a news anchor over at ICRT, and I am now currently a copy editor and news anchor at Taiwan Plus.
Yeah, we actually, we work in the very similar industries, and you
at this point,
right? When I was teaching English, you were trying to poach me for ICRT for the longest time.
I never managed it.
Right? I finally wound up in this industry and not at ICRT. But yeah, what are we geeking out about today?
Today we're going to be talking about, I was going to say board games, but that's not technically correct. Tabletop games.
Yes, because not all games come with a board.
That's right.
Well, unless you buy the licensed version, which costs you more money.
And which we do anyway. Yes.
Tabletop games, most people are familiar with, or I guess like my childhood favorites, right? Like Sorry, Monopoly, games like that. But we tend to be a bit more nerdy about it.
You could say that. Yeah, so growing up in the U.S., the games you just mentioned were the ones we tended to grow up with.
Yeah, totally.
Monopoly, Sorry. There's some variations. You had like the Unos, the card games.
Yeah, right.
I suppose you could call, Operation and Concentration.
Operation freaked me out so bad.
But those were kind of in the same ballpark,
yeah.
right? Games that you played on some device on the table. But things have progressed. Things have improved since then.
I would definitely call it improvement.
Yeah. So I had my first taste of what we call, modern gaming back in high school here in Taiwan. That's when we were both studying at Taipei American School.
That's right.
And I believe it was at our friend Sean's place.
Oh, nice.
Who first introduced me to what is widely considered a great gateway game into the hobby called Settlers of Catan. It's actually been very big in pop culture in recent years. There have been some big sports players who've played it.
Yep.
It's gotten a lot of media attention. I think there was talk of a movie. I'm not sure if that ever went forward.
What? They were going to make a movie of Settlers?
Don't know how that would work, but I think some studio licensed it.
Okay, let's explain Settlers of Catan for those who are unfamiliar with this gateway game, which you should play, by the way.
Yes, everyone should play.
Everyone should play.
Basically, there is a randomly generated map made up of hexes. Each hex produces a certain amount of resources. Each player has buildings on those hexes, and if you roll some dice and the number comes up, you get the associated resources, which you can then make improvements.
Exactly.
Each improvement is worth a certain value of points. Once you hit the target number, somebody wins.
Yeah, somebody wins.
That's it in a nutshell.
You see a lot of memes about settlers saying, do you have sheep?
Did you wood for a sheep?
Yeah, that's what that's about.
I'm the king of wood. Those kind of jokes.
Yeah, those kinds of jokes are from Settlers of Catan.
That's right.
So, as we've mentioned, that is a gateway game. You experienced it in high school.
That was my gateway game. And then I believe that's how I got you into the hobby as well.
That is correct. You were like, hey, Michelle, you want to come over and play some board games? And I'm like, Monopoly?
Yeah, but more fun.
So, yes, Settlers of Catan was also my first gateway to the nerdier, much cooler board games.
And it's all been downhill from here.
Down a rabbit hole, as we say. It's like falling in there like Alice. I took a flying leap into this universe.
I joke that because I started down this nerdy path much earlier than you did. Yep. So, I was there with a shovel. And then you came in with a power drill and just exceeded me in all ways.
I came in with an earth mover.
Exactly. And I'm just there one shovel at a time and like, what's she doing over there?
So what kinds of tabletop games are there? So Settlers of Catan would be a dice.
Resource management, card management. There's a lot of these technical terms for different mechanics in games. I think my personal favorite is the deck building genre. Basically, in this type of game, everyone usually starts with the same number of cards in your deck.
Yep.
And then eventually you purchase different cards from like a shared pool or something, making your deck unique. So it's towards your play style, and then every player will have a different play style, but you're all trying to reach the same goal, be it, getting a certain number of points or maybe using the cards to attack the opponent and taking out their life total.
Right.
But it's during the course of the game that you differentiate yourself from each other player. And I think that's my favorite genre.
I'd also say that deck building is my favorite genre as well. Any specific games that we like within that genre?
For me, it's the classic, the one that started the genre called Dominion.
Oh, it's the same one. That's the exact one that I was thinking.
I know, because between us, we own many, many expansions of that same game.
I don't think we have all of them.
No, that's impossible, because then we would never be able to move that quantity of cards.
That's true.
I believe there is well over 15 different expansions
Yep.
for that one base game.
The base game itself, I think, is like 500 cards or something insane. And then each expansion adds many more onto it. I started this situation where I have an organizational system.
Which I eventually copied.
And then you guys have made apps for specifically this game, Dominion, where the app will include whatever expansions and base game that you have, and then it'll help you randomize which cards you use. And then we pull those cards from the box that we have meticulously organized.
And then the more expansions you have, the more options you have, and the combinations become functionally infinite because you're never going to play every single combination in your lifetime.
You're never going to play the exact same game twice, ever, unless you choose to.
Which you can. It's perfectly acceptable to choose your favorite cards, which we've done sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there are a few cards that we just particularly like, and
Or
we pull them out
really
and then
dislike.
randomize the rest. That's also very true. Because those cards drag the game out. You remember a few of those games, I'm sure.
Right. Was it Montebank?
Montebank was the thief.
I like the thief.
Michelle tends to go for the attack cards, shall we say that?
Yeah, generally I am I will choose martial tactics over most other tactics. And we know that. I mean, as you play together as a friend group,
there's a certain meta that develops within your gaming group. And certain players tend to go for certain strategies.
Yes.
In Michelle's case, it's attacking me.
Absolutely. When in doubt, attack Eric Gao. Why? Because you were patient zero when it came to a lot of the fantastical nerd stuff that happens here. You were the one to introduce the rest of us to these games. Therefore, you have more experience. Therefore, attack you rather than another noob.
I cannot fault your logic.
Exactly, right? So Dominion is awesome, guys. If you have never played it, then head to your nearest game cafe and you can play that game. It is fairly quick to learn because all you have to do is read what's on each card. It's a great experience.
And actually, thankfully, at least here in Taipei, game cafes are fairly common.
They're getting common everywhere, which is something I am very happy about.
So it's actually very easy to go out and find a place, sit down for an hour or two, learn a few games.
Have a cup of coffee.
And then if you like it, you can buy it.
That's right.
Try before you buy.
I have purchased games before I have tried them, which sometimes doesn't work out very well.
Also, a benefit of being in this particular hobby at this point in time, there's something called YouTube where you can watch other people teach the game and review the games.
Although Abyss, which is a game that I have purchased by looks alone, just based on artwork, we still don't know how to play.
Yeah, we've played it at least 3 or 4 times. And there's at least one rule that we
don't understand
know
or something.
How to do
and
it
I
properly.
have watched the YouTube for it.
I think that's more of us problem.
I think that's more, yeah, that's true. That's nothing against the game. The game is gorgeous. And it's an underworld, kind of a dark art aesthetic, which I love. But right, other categories besides deck building and resource management?
There's a couple of just smaller games that, fillers that we play before everyone shows up. Love Letter is one that we pull out quite often.
Oh, love that one. Right? And Love Letter has come out with a bunch of different variations.
I think even beyond Settlers of Catan, this might be an excellent example of a gateway game.
Oh,
right? Because there's only, 8 different cards in the game?
There's 8 different cards in the game, although there's more than one.
Multiple copies of a few of them. So there's only 8 rules you need to learn.
Exactly.
Depending on the version you get, there might be a language barrier. Being here in Taiwan, there's English and Chinese versions. But
8 rules is fairly easy to remember.
You can rattle off those rules if you're the one teaching them fairly quickly. I've taught it to my cousins. They've quite enjoyed it, and they've gone on to play other games. And this is literally something you can have in your pocket.
That is very true. It is a small game. I have the version called
Lovecraft
Letter, which is based on H.P. Lovecraft's really messed up world.
Cthulhu.
And it gives an extra spin. It provides insanity rules. So if you happen to be able to make your sanity check, meaning you stay sane, you can access the insane rules of a card, which are super OP. But every time you want to try to play, you have to make another sanity check to make sure you don't...
Risk versus reward.
Risk versus reward. Yeah. I think that's well balanced.
It is.
That's a great one. I found because you can separate the sane versus insane cards. You can just play the base game, which makes it great for, as you say, gateway teaching people. And then you add the nutty stuff in.
And as you mentioned, there are many different versions of Love Letter. So
is there Batman?
There is. That might be the most egregious version because it's called Batman Love Letter. And everyone goes... Excuse me, what? It's not like Batman, a love letter game. It's just Batman Love Letter. But there are many different versions. I think there's an Adventure Time. There's so many different IPs that have been slapped onto the same game. It's essentially the same game. They might tweak some rules.
Yep.
But there's basically a version out there for you.
Yes, I love it because the reason why they're able to do this is because it's such a simple game to learn and the mechanics are so simple to play.
Exactly.
But yeah, Kickstarters. have been a huge component of this world for a while. I think I myself kickstarted Everdell, which is adorable, you guys.
Yes, that's another very great game.
Resource management game.
Resource management. It also includes what we call worker placement. You have a certain number of workers, certain number of places you can put those workers. So it's a matter of what's the best use of each individual worker I have right now. It's a very tactical game.
It's actually quite strategy heavy, but in an adorable way because you're a group of woodland creatures.
The theme is, you're building up your little town of woodland creatures, and you're
It's so
essentially
cute.
preparing for the coming winter.
Right.
You're gathering food and
The timeline
resources.
is actually seasons.
Yeah.
So you start in the spring, you have summer and autumn.
You're building up your lair, your towns,
Yes.
your nests.
Yes. My favorite is actually the little figurines, that little wooden meeples that come along are in the form of all of the little woodland creatures you can be. So there's squirrels, and there's
Squirrel.
axolotls. There's
Oh right, for the water
hedgehogs.
expansion.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
There's a whole bunch of different ones. Any Kickstarter game that you're particularly fond of?
Yes and no. Because this is the problem with Kickstarter. It's very easy to be like, "Ooh, that sounds cool.
Ooh, look at
Let
this
me buy
video.
it."
Yeah.
I haven't played it yet. So the latest game is called Flamecraft. It is completely adorable. The theme is it's a town where dragons and humans live in peace, and these tiny adorable little dragons help humans with their tasks.
I've actually seen this video.
In the bakery, in the jewelry shop,
Yeah.
in the smithy or whatever, the dragons are there helping. Unfortunately, partially due to COVID, we haven't actually sat down and played this game, even though I've had it in my collection for like a year now.
So it has to be a day dedicated to testing this game.
We need to learn how to play the game,
Right, so it's
before we
usually-
can bring other people in and teach them the game.
Correct. So it's usually getting people who are fairly experienced gamers in and playing it a couple times to see if we know what we're doing.
That might be one of the biggest hurdles to this hobby. It's hard to jump in by yourself.
That's true.
You kind of need someone to
Handhold,
guide you,
yeah,
to handhold you, like get a basic idea of what kind of games you like, what kind of themes you like, maybe
Yep.
suggest something, and then teach it to you, because a lot of these games are very hard to learn from the rule book itself.
Oh, dude, I am terrible at learning rules just from reading them off of a rule book or a piece of paper or the internet. It doesn't go in. It doesn't absorb. The way that I best learn is kinetically. So I actually have to play the game in order to learn how it's played. Right. And that is annoying for a lot of people trying to teach because I'm sitting there going, what do I do? And you have to tell me.
It is a hobby for everyone,
Yeah.
but it's best to have a guide.
You do need a master nerd amongst you.
Or patient zero, as
Patient
as
zero.
you labeled me earlier.
Right? You do need someone there who already knows the game in order to teach it to you, which is why I think a lot of game cafes are really handy. They're so essential to the hobby because usually all the games in the cafe staff have played. And that way, if you don't know how to play something, they can show you.
Right.
Yeah, it's part of their services. Go and support your local businesses, guys.
And depending on how well the cafe might be laid out, sometimes they have like an entire shelf for beginner games, moderate games, heavy games, things like
Love
that.
it. That's a good idea.
So they might be like, these are the 2 players, the 3 players, the 4 players, things like that. So it's very, okay, how many people do we have in our group today? And based on experience level, okay, so 3 players medium.
Right.
2 players new, 5 players new, something like that.
Oh, I love that. That's a great idea. Game shops, if you guys are listening, then organizing by difficulty level or level of complexity. Yeah. It might be a great way to make it so that your customers coming into the shop can choose what best to play.
I've seen that in at least 1 or 2 cafes here in Taiwan.
That's awesome. That is becoming extremely popular, specifically here because everybody lives in small apartments for the most part. Taipei is a city where we're all on top of each other. And it's difficult to have a space for a table big enough to play some of these games.
Yeah, especially if there's 4 or 5 people trying to huddle around a small enclosed space.
Yeah.
Everyone's elbows jostling and then hitting things on the table.
So we've talked about Dominion, the various versions of Love Letter. I've talked about Everdell and
Flamecraft.
Flamecraft.
Yes.
We have to beta test that.
Yes, we do.
Any other games of note that we want to recommend for
since
folks?
you mentioned it, there is perhaps the deepest end of the pool, tabletop wargaming.
Dude, it's very deep.
In my case, that is the Warhammer 40,000 miniatures game. Some of y'all might have heard of it.
Yeah.
It's gotten very big in recent years, but it's been around for 30 odd years.
Judging by the quality of the
35 years, I
miniatures,
think.
a very long time. The early miniatures are pretty interesting
the
looking.
the reason we say this is the deep end of the pool, it's not just, you buy the game, you come home, you read the rules, and you play. This involves making miniatures.
Yes.
Cutting them out from sprues, gluing them together, following instructions to make sure you get it right.
At that point, you can technically play, but it's cooler if you paint them.
Yes, and that's the most time-consuming part of the entire hobby. And then because there are so many rules, like the actual rule book is a tome.
Yeah.
It is a weighty tome.
It is a college textbook that you spent $300 on and will never use.
It's technically cheaper than college textbooks.
That's true.
And I think I get more use out of them.
Yeah, okay.
And then there are, I think, some like 28 separate armies in the game.
That I think is really neat. So there is an army for everyone.
Yes.
I personally play Tyranids after you roped me into this hobby.
Nom, 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 nom.
Tyranids are a race of extremely hungry beings that seek to consume everything. Really.
For video gamers, if you've played StarCraft, they are the Zerg. If you're a movie watcher, they are the bugs from Starship Troopers.
Exactly.
That's what they are.
Yes. What do you play?
I play the generic Space Marines.
But you get
The
staunch
most defenders of
updates.
humanity.
Yeah,
Yes,
you
this
are
is
the
true.
Starship Troopers.
Yes, that's exactly true.
Right. But yeah, you get the most updates and the most new model releases and stuff. I only recently got an updated few models. It was only a few too.
There's going to be more. They have promised that more will be coming this year.
Really?
Yes,
Really?
they've promised.
Okay. We're counting on you, Games Workshop. Are you listening? Please send us stuff. We're talking about you and recommending your game.
Yes.
Okay, so how do we, once we get these minis painted up, how does wargaming work?
So, deep dive time. So
Deep dive.
you build your army, which requires the models that you've made. There's a lot of list writing and points and making sure everything fits properly within the points limit that you're playing, yada, yada, yada.
Which is great because they've created apps to help with this.
Only very recently have
Only
we had the official
very
ones.
recently.
Previously, they were not so great or unofficial. Anyway, so you get your maps, you get your lists, and then you need a space.
Yep.
So a large dinner table.
It
This
has
is
to
not
be large.
This is not something you can play on just, a coffee table
Yeah.
or something. It's large. Ideally, you want some sort of terrain to make it look cool, and so you're not just fighting across a
table.
barren plain.
Yeah.
And then you're going to need dice, you're going to need rulers, you're going to need some sort of objective markers, so the things that you're fighting over.
Yeah.
And that's when all the rules come in and you say, okay, my model can move this number of inches, and once I'm within range of you, I can shoot this weapon and see if I hit, then see if I wound you, and then see if your armor's good enough to save.
And then if not, and they take damage.
Then you take damage, then you start removing models, and then you see, okay, so do I claim this point? Then I get some victory points. There's a lot of interchangeable lingo in these games, unfortunately.
It's a lot. I was
Roped in.
roped into this deep end of the pool. And I'm really in it for the painting of the model. That's actually my favorite part is the assembly and painting of these minis. It's surprisingly meditative.
Yes.
Where you sit there and you're concentrating on creating this tiny little creature, right? Each mini is maybe an inch tall, generally. Unless you get the big Gribbly, which
you personally love.
I love the big monsters. They're so great. And then when I go to the actual table to play, there are so many rules. It's a very crunchy game.
So I'm the one who ends up having to do all the mental math to say,
Thank you.
okay, did you hit? Yes, you did. All right, so your strength is versus my toughness, so then it's a 3+, so you roll the die, and then you can re-roll
I
the ones.
appreciate that, man. I appreciate it. Because I am also, incidentally, really bad at math.
Which is strange, because you're going to need a lot of it in your board gaming life.
That's true. Well, okay. I do
lot of basic math.
Basic math, right? I do enjoy the rolling of the dice, of which you roll a lot. They're all D6s, which is difficult for me. As you guys know, I run phoenixdice.com, where you can go to for all of your adventuring gear needs. But it's all D6s, and you roll like a ton of them. 2 fistfuls, basically.
You can, yeah.
You can. And sometimes it's like 70 dice.
I've seen people play games where they roll like 90 dice at once. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And I love it because, first of all, the clacking sounds, but the amount of points.
The clack math rocks.
Right? I picked up a dice tower that was thematically relevant to this game, and like blood red dice. The whole sensory of rolling 70 dice at a time and looking at the numbers that you accrue from this is just spectacular.
So many sixes, yes.
So many sixes, right? Well, guys, if you have not played any tabletop games beyond your basic stuff like Monopoly, which tends to make people angry, by the way.
Yeah, it's not a great intro to the hobby.
It's not a great intro to the hobby. Please go to your local game cafe or, round up a group of friends and visit your local nerd shop where you can pick up a game. Ask for something entry level if you haven't tried already. You should really jump into this world. There are so many variations of different genre within each category of games. There's so many great examples. We didn't even scratch the surface, I don't think.
And I think you'll find that the members of this community are very welcoming. We want to share a hobby with people.
Absolutely. The more games, the more players, the better.
If you show up by yourself at a gaming cafe and are interested, introduce yourself to a group and ask, hey, I'm new to this. would you mind teaching me
Yeah.
the game that you're playing?
Yeah, can I play?
And chances are,
They'll probably say yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The more nerds, the merrier, guys.
yeah.
Thanks for geeking out with me, Eric.
You're welcome.
And thanks, listeners, for tuning in to Radio Taiwan International. I'm Michelle Chang, and we'll be back next Thursday with another episode of Geek Out.